What is up, everybody? This is Adam. Welcome back to Fouled Out. We are through 5 weeks of the NFL season somehow already. It feels like it's going by so fast. I just wanted to slow down so we can enjoy it while it's here. But we're going to grab Matt and start talking about some of the big news that came out the last couple days. The Jets fired Robert Saleh today, their head coach. The Patriots are starting my boy, Drake Maye, on Sunday against the Houston Texans. And we obviously have a whole week of football we just played to talk about, as well as gambling picks and fantasy advice for week 6 at the end of this episode. Before we get started, just a reminder, you could reach out to us, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. We really appreciate you guys listening. We would love to hear from you. Share your gambling picks with us for the week and send us your horrible fantasy loss stories. Those are some of my favorite things every week when people write in and say, I started so-and-so and I lost by 0.7 points because Matt's fantasy team not doing that great this season. One of mine is really good and the other one is kind of struggling the last couple weeks. So it's fun to commiserate with the fans or celebrate. Let us know your awesome fantasy wins as well. Again, fouledousports@gmail.com. But for now, let's grab Matt and let's talk week 5 of the NFL season. Let's go. All right, Matt is here. I always say fresh off of the week of football, but we're recording this on a Wednesday night, so we kind of had a couple days after the week of football. But Matt, how you doing, buddy?
Doing all right.
This is a no notes podcast.
Yeah.
We have one of these every once in a while where life gets lifey, and I can't do the normal amount of preparation that goes into an episode, but somehow these episodes are always the best. And yet I insist on doing 5 to 6 pages of notes every week anyway.
Now it's just normal that we're going to talk about 1960s football the entire time.
That's what I was going to say is that like last week, there was an outline and there was notes and there was all sorts of stuff. And we ended up talking about 1960s AFL football for like 20 minutes on the podcast anyway. So excited to see where this one goes. Matt, we played 5 weeks of football. The season's going by way too fast. Before we jump into the actual football, I was thinking we could talk a little bit about the news that's come out over the last couple of days because I went on NFL Reddit and the top 75 posts are all about the fact that the Jets fired their head coach, Robert Saleh,
Yeah.
today. Apparently completely unexpected by Saleh or anybody in that locker room that Woody Johnson basically just walked in and was like, hey,
Not named Aaron Rodgers.
you're done. Yeah, that's so the Jets do fire Saleh. The Jets are 2-3 after losing in London in what was definitely a football game. I violated my number one rule last week of don't gamble on the London game. I even said it on the podcast. I was like,
Yep.
never pick the London game. And I talked last week about how negative 2.5 should be a smash spot for the Vikings, but it's in London. And I was like, it's going to be fucking weird. I took Vikings by 2.5 and just sweat out that bet for the entire second half because the Vikings were up 17-0 and did their best to not win by 2.5 points.
Yeah, seriously.
So anyway, though, they come back, get to the States. Robert Saleh gets to his office today. The first thing that happens to him is Woody Johnson comes in. He's like, you're fired. Security's escorting you out, which is not how that's handled in organizations, like in NFL front offices. But I don't know. What's your reaction to Saleh being fired? Right move, wrong move?
I'm not going to sit here and say that he has like earned the right to get through the season or anything like that. But man, I mean, you look at the stats on like what the defense has done since he's been there, like number 1 to 3 in the league in that span of time. in like a lot of really, really important metrics. Uh, some of them including scoring, over that span of time. And it's like when you reflect on apparently some of the sentiments coming from the players, it's like, okay, but how does this fix the offense? Uh, it makes you wonder how this helps the team in any way, right? I'm not saying that he has been a solution, but man, like if he had coached out the rest of this year and he wasn't able to figure out a play caller that can help them score points so that the team can win games, then yeah, it makes total sense to let him go in the offseason. But right now, like I don't see how that fixes the offense. And the offense is the issue, not the defense. Not that the defense has been like on the same heater it was last year, but it's not the problem.
The thing that's super suspicious about this whole thing is that there were reports that Saleh was either going to fire Nathaniel Hackett today, their offensive coordinator, or significantly reduce his play calling duties on game day. You know, if you know about the Jets, you know that Nathaniel Hackett is Aaron Rodgers' boy.
Yep.
Like they're super tight. The whole reason that he's there as the offensive coordinator in the first place is because Aaron Rodgers was going to be their quarterback and that's who he wanted. And that was kind of the deal as part of bringing him in. So the reports of like, oh, hey, Hackett was about to get the Hackett hatchet. And then all of a sudden Saleh's the one getting fired is like extremely suspicious. And I know Aaron Rodgers did his appearance on the Pat McAfee show today and he's like, it's completely false and blah, blah, blah. I don't believe that shit for a minute.
I mean, like, if you did, would you come out and just be like, yeah, I did that shit? No.
I mean,
so like, why?
Might be
why
like
would anyone believe it?
Aaron Rodgers sends his regards of like, wait, you are Aaron Rodgers. Exactly. That would have been a great podcast moment. But
honestly, that would have made McAfee so much money.
So it's suspicious, but I don't think there was a magic bullet that's going to fix this offense. Like, yeah, I agree. They probably should try a different play caller. You know who Hackett reminds me of? Adam Gase. Is that like he was good with a really good quarterback somewhere in the past, and he's made a whole career off of like, oh, well, he was really good when he was the quarterback's coach for this guy. Like with Gase, it was Peyton Manning, and I think Hackett was Aaron Rodgers' quarterback coach when he was MVP or whatever.
You know what's funny about this situation too? Is that Gase coached there, and when he was let go, guess who was not let out of the facility by security? Adam Gase.
It's because it's not how you do this.
Right? But like the guy who's at least been good on one side of the ball, like fuck that guy.
Well, this is the thing is like I don't think there's a magic bullet to fixing this offense because I think it has problems that are bigger than like, okay, we're going to relieve you of your play calling duty and let somebody else do it. And then it's going to be fine. And Robert Saleh, like I know I saw the stuff today that the Jets are like number one in defensive EPA and number one in whatever sense. And they've played the fourth most snaps of any defense. And they're really good on defense since Saleh got there. Robert Saleh's winning percentage as a head coach is 0.357. That is the 14th worst of all time for any coach with at least 50 games coached in the Super Bowl era. He's bad. He's not it's not a good coach. It's not like we're like, okay, well, you've been killing it, but it's down this season. There was talk about him getting fired in the offseason.
Yeah.
And by all accounts, he was already on the hot seat with them starting 2-2. Yeah. And then they go to London to play a game where Jets owner Woody Johnson, who was the U.S. ambassador to the UK under Donald Trump, which should tell you all you need to know about Woody Johnson.
Yep.
But he was so he was the US ambassador to UK and has a lot of friends in London that were all
Hmm.
coming to the game and hanging out in the owner's box with him. And like it was a big deal for him. And he was reportedly extremely embarrassed by the team's performance. So, you're already on the hot seat. You piss off the owner. Like, I don't know, man. It's just, I know a lot of
Yeah.
people, whenever a coach gets fired like this, a lot of people come to their defense and they're like, well, oh, he didn't deserve it. He's a great coach. But like, he obviously is not
Yeah.
performing well.
Yeah. I'm not gonna sit here and defend him as a head coach. Obviously, like the results aren't there, and quite frankly, uh, it shows to me a severe error in judgment that he decided to go with Nathaniel Hackett as an offensive coordinator to satisfy Aaron Rodgers, right? Instead of like really buckling down and figuring out like who is actually the best person that I can bring in that is going to elevate this offense, right? Because we're seeing the fruits of that lack of labor now. And I mean, you're right. Like there isn't a magic bullet that's going to fix this offense because A, I don't think the structure of this offense is particularly very good, but B, like it's being manned by a quarterback who quite frankly is not like the superhuman that he once was. He's still got a gun, like don't get me wrong, but like I think so much of the decision to go out and get him was due to the idea that like this is the guy who can go put on the cape and just like be unreal and save us when everything is wrong, and that's just not who he is. Like that guy is gone.
My biggest problem with the whole Aaron Rodgers and the Jets thing is like I still believe that Rodgers can be, you know, 24 touchdowns, 13 interceptions,
Yeah.
and be like a good enough starting quarterback for them to be above 500.
Hmm.
But my biggest problem with this whole thing is like we've seen this, and I guess it's more apparent in the NBA because it happens there more often that whenever you do all of this stuff to accommodate one player and you
Hmm.
hand over the keys of the entire franchise to one guy, that it never, ever, ever, ever ends well.
Yep.
And so they, to get
Russell
him,
Wilson.
yeah, Russell Wilson was a good example. I think about like the anti example of this is Tom Brady going to Tampa Bay.
Hmm.
And they bring in Gronk, but like, yeah, of course you're going to bring in Gronk, but they didn't like, it's not like they had to bring in like Josh McDaniels and
Yeah.
like, he's like, oh, go get me like these 10 receivers I want. And like, he brought his best friend with him, who's one of the greatest tight ends of all time. Cool. And they go on to win a Super Bowl. Saleh coming over from the San Francisco 49ers, you can't tell me that there's not like 10 quality control coaches who are like the next great offensive coordinator that he could have taken from the 49er staff. Like we've
Yeah.
seen, Mike McDaniel come from there. We've seen other people come off the
Hmm.
Shanahan tree who are good. And instead of, like you said, going out and doing your due diligence and being like, okay, what do we have? What do we want this offense to look like? They deferred to Aaron Rodgers basically.
Yeah.
And they're like, Aaron, give us a shopping list and we will go get all the groceries for you. It's like that Kroger Go app where you just order all your groceries and someone meets you at the front of Kroger and they're like, here
Yeah.
you go. But you don't get to pick out your own eggs. So it's like there's no quality control.
Yeah.
But he got his offensive coordinator he wanted. They went and got Alan Lazard and like 10 other, Randall Cobb was there for a while, which was
Yeah.
hilarious. And they, they handed over the entire franchise to him. And they're like, well, you have whatever you want, Aaron, if as long as you come here. And this is what you get when you do that.
Yeah.
it hasn't worked out. So I know that there's the sentiment of like, how does firing Saleh fix our offense? But I don't know, like, I don't think anybody can come and tell me the move that was going to fix this offense anyway.
Yeah.
And Saleh's been doing a bad job results wise.
I won't disagree with that. However, I think to this move is further poisoning the well with the Aaron Rodgers move. All right, you did everything for Aaron Rodgers. You don't think the players are well aware of the fact that the Jets are not paying Hassan Reddick after going out to get him. So you're not going out for the guy that you went out to get, right? Um, are you making any of these efforts to make any of the other players on this roster happy? No. Okay, well now like the team's losing and you fire the head coach, but all the players are like, okay, you fired the guy who didn't have anything to do with the offense though, and the offense is why we're losing. So like I just unless they start winning games immediately, I don't see how this doesn't get worse.
The thing that's so weird to me about the Jets right now is like, what is going on with Breece Hall in their running game? I don't, we talked like before the season, Breece Hall was like the number one overall pick in fantasy for everybody.
Yeah.
One of my bold predictions was he was going to be like the number one non-quarterback in fantasy. And he was incredible last year with Zach Wilson and,
Yeah.
less talent on the offense. And now it's like he's not even the best running back on his own team. That Braylon Allen kid from Wisconsin is like, when you watch the games, he is way better for the eye test. And Breece Hall just supposed to be year 2 coming off the torn ACL, and somehow he looks like he's worse.
Well,
like he's no explosion, there's no holes. Like I don't really understand what's going on there.
I think there's a couple of things. The offensive line isn't as good as people were hoping it would be.
But it was bad last year too.
Right. And now that Aaron Rodgers is actually playing, further catering the offense to Aaron Rodgers, which doesn't necessarily coincide with catering the offense to, quite frankly, your best offensive player in Breece Hall.
It's just weird because it seems like Braylon Allen's running the same plays that Breece Hall is, and Braylon Allen's having
but they're very
way more
different
success.
styles of player.
They are. I mean, they were both bad against the Vikings the other day, but
yeah,
like so that would be my number one thing of like, okay, how do you fix this offense? I'm like, you get the running game going.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers threw 54 times on Sunday.
Yeah.
54. And he targeted Garrett Wilson 22 times. Because like I think that's the other thing right now is people are like, well, he finally got Garrett Wilson going. Look, 13 catches. I'm like, okay, well, he targeted 22 times.
Yeah.
And Garrett Wilson had the worst fantasy output of any player ever targeted 20 or more times in a game. So
yeah,
like that it looks good on paper, but it's really not going great there. So I'm getting back to what I thought this offense was going to be coming into the season, where it's like, okay, we have this awesome running back. Braylon Allen is obviously pretty good as well. So you got 2 good backs. I'm trying to establish the run game and getting back to Breece Hall being the center point of this offense. And then Rodgers is throwing off play action.
Yeah.
He's quick game when they need to kill running calls and stuff like that. But I agree with you. I think like anytime Rodgers throws 54 passes in a game, you lost.
Yeah.
You lost.
And this kind of like, look at what we're seeing, and preseason, you and a lot of other people are making that argument, like, well, with Aaron Rodgers playing, like even just giving like league average quarterback play, look how much better this team is going to be. And again, I'm just like, why are we assuming that's what we're getting? He's coming off an ACL in his 40s, and like, quite frankly, the year before that, he didn't play particularly well either.
I think that's the problem is like eye test wise, he looks like he still has the talent and the
Hmm.
skill and the whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it, to give you that like league average quarterback play or be,
Yep.
like I said, 24 touchdowns, 12 picks, I think would be a world of difference for
Yeah.
them right now. But you would not take a league average quarterback and make him the center point of your offense. And this is the
No.
problem is they're like, hey, Derek Carr, you're the center point of the offense now. That's basically what you need is you just need Derek Carr, but you would never make
Yeah.
Derek Carr the focal point of your offense when you have Alvin Kamara,
Yeah.
right? For the Saints. Like, so
And
you have Brees Hall. Brees Hall should be the center point of like focal point of your offense and just let Aaron Rodgers be a league average to slightly above league average quarterback and not
yeah,
have to throw the cape on.
Zach Wilson is not a good quarterback, but they're not better now than they were with Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
They're
But
not.
again, I think it's like, hey, nobody was like Zach Wilson. You could go out there and throw 54 passes on Sunday.
No.
It would have been a
And
disaster.
that's the thing is like when you bring in Aaron Rodgers, you're gonna do that because hey, if you're dumb enough to do that, then you're relying on him
Well, it
inherently.
goes back to the OC thing too of like you
Yeah.
hired a yes man to do
Yeah.
whatever Aaron Rodgers wants to do. You didn't
Yep.
hire someone who's going to be like,
Yeah.
no, like you need to give up the ball.
Yeah. I mean, like week 4, right? When it was a sloppy, wet, windy game and they threw the ball like 40 plus times. Like, I don't care if it's Brees Hall or Allen, like you need to run the ball in that game.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to miss Robert Saleh. There's nothing more fun as a fan. Well, I guess there are some things that are more fun, but one of the most fun things as a fan of a sports team is when a team that you hate has an awful coach. Aaron Boone has been the manager of the Yankees for like ever at this point, like 10
Yeah.
years. And the Yankees always win between 90 and 100 games and then lose in horribly embarrassing fashion in the playoffs because Aaron Boone is a shitty coach. And every year I get nervous that they're going to fire Aaron Boone because I'm like, I love Aaron Boone. Please, one more year of Aaron Boone. I'm not ready to give up Aaron Boone yet as the Yankees manager. And that's how I felt. That's
Uh,
how I feel about Salah right now too. Where I'm like, he's only won less than like a little bit less than 36% of his games. He sucks.
I mean,
I'm gonna miss him.
who was the last coach they had that was good?
That's my North Star right now. Is like the Jets have never had a good coach.
Yeah.
They almost had Bill
Like
Belichick and
the
lost him,
like
but
the last one that had that was like somewhat passable was Rex Ryan.
mhm. Rex Ryan really good at coaching players' footwork. Great foot soldiers out there coached by Rex Ryan. Yeah, well, I mean, the Jets went to an AFC championship game with Rex Ryan,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
I mean,
So
like he wasn't bad. It just I guess there's always a cap when you're being led by Mark Sanchez. So
it's amazing. Like, this is my whole thing. This is a little bit off topic, but
that man survived a butt fumble.
it'll never cease to piss me off. The playoff, if you go back and look at Tom Brady's playoff career with the Patriots and look at who he lost to, pisses me off so much. This is the Jake Plummer rule. It's like Jake Plummer, if you look at his career stats, he is a completely league average quarterback.
Yeah.
Like he's the perfect average. I think he's just about 500 for his career and has like the same amount of touchdowns as he has interceptions. Like perfectly balanced quarterback. He was the first quarterback to ever beat Tom Brady in a playoff game. And from then all the way until Matt Stafford beat Tom Brady in his last career playoff game, every single quarterback who beat Tom Brady in the playoffs was worse than Jake Plummer.
Yeah.
And Mark Sanchez and Rex Ryan went into Foxborough and fucking smoked Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. The Patriots had already beat them twice that year, and they went in there and absolutely cooked the
Yeah.
Patriots. And that was the Bart Starr interview after the game where he was yelling and he's like, "Oh, I'll see you in like whoever they played next." He's like, "We'll see you there." But yeah, it's Mark Sanchez beat Tom Brady. Obviously, it's Eli Manning, it's Nick Foles, it's the corpse of Peyton Manning that one year when he was with Denver. Yeah, it's not great. Not great. It's pissed me off. So yeah, anyway, I'll miss Salah because like it's as a Lions fan, like
Yeah.
when you go from having shitty coaches for years and years and years to all of a sudden you do get a good one,
Hmm.
then how fast things can change. And I look at like, your division. Now the Packers have a really good head coach. The Vikings have a good head coach. But like the Bears head coach still is awful. And
Yep.
you're gonna enjoy that because you're gonna like enjoy it's Schadenfreude or whatever, however you say that.
Schadenfreude.
Schadenfreude to just enjoy their misery. And then someday they're gonna get a good head coach and they're gonna have Caleb Williams and a good head coach. You just get like, shit, I miss Eberflus. So I know
But
like
you're saying the Bears are going to hire a good head coach.
I'm also saying the Jets are going to. I'm not saying it's
Yeah.
going to happen. I'm just saying like
Yeah.
when you fire Salah,
Yeah.
you've opened the door for there to be a chance.
I know.
So like maybe they'll hire a good head coach, but since it's the Jets, they'll probably like recycle some old hack like Bill Belichick. And God, could you imagine Bill Belichick as the Jets head coach finally after all these years after he was supposed
God,
to be their head coach and went to the Pats?
how pissed would you be?
Oh, that would be the worst timeline for me. They were like, yeah, he might coach Philly. And I'm like, oh, Philly. And they're like, he might coach Jacksonville. And I was like, okay, what? I don't care about that. But yeah, the Jets would be a really tough one for me to swallow. But where Bill is in his life right now is that he has an unnatural attachment to Matt Patricia. Like,
Yeah, I've noticed that.
so I went to listen to Bill Belichick's podcast on Underdog, and I was really excited about it. And I was like, oh man, Bill Belichick doing a podcast. Like, and I think it was like week 2. I went and downloaded it. I was like, I'm gonna listen to this. And it was like talking about improvement from week 1 to week 2. And I was like, oh man, I'm so interested to hear Bill Belichick, like long format, talk about this. And it's like with Matt Patricia. And I was like, what the fuck does this guy know about improvement? Why is he on the like
It literally got worse every year he was there.
why can't you do anything without Matt Patricia at this point in your life? Like what I would just really love to know what is the thing that Bill Belichick looks at Matt Patricia and goes like, yes, that's my guy. That's my friend. It's like you can't even do the podcast without him. Right.
Yeah.
Like I've been saving that as like a special scold, like a week that I can't think of a scold. I was just going to scold Bill Belichick for like, he's your defensive coordinator and he sucks. So you bring him back as your offensive coordinator and he's worse. And you get fired from being the Patriots head coach in part because you did all this. And you know what you do? You're like, you know who needs another chance? Matt Patricia. He was 13, 29, and 1. Good for a 31% win percentage. If he qualified, he would be number 9,
Yeah.
the 9th worst ever. Do
Woo.
you want to guess who has the worst winning percentage of any coach ever? You know this.
Is it Hugh?
It's Hugh Jackson.
Yeah. I mean, that man won one game over 2 years.
He had a
Like,
.205
yeah.
and again, this is for coaches in the Super Bowl era who coached at least 50 games. Hugh Jackson, .205.
Yeah.
There's some names on here though. Very ironically, I would say Steve Spagnuolo is number 2.212, the probably the greatest defensive coordinator of all time. I would say, like, what does he have?
I
5 rings as a defensive coordinator?
yeah, I'm curious, does he just not want to be a head coach again? I could understand it,
I
but
mean, if I were him, I would just be happy. Like, all
winning
you,
Super Bowls.
I mean, I don't want to talk about Kansas City because I'm sick of them, but they probably through 5 weeks have the best defense in the league,
Yeah.
right? Like, just seeing what we've seen, and it's just annoying because
Yeah.
it is somewhat reminiscent of the Patriots, where it's like, oh, we traded away L'Jarius Sneed. He's the best DB that we've ever had, and now the defense is better. It's like, how? How does that make any sense? So annoying. But yeah, this is a trip down memory lane. It's Hugh Jackson, Steve Spagnuolo, Gus Bradley, who's doing a shitty job as the defensive coordinator for the Colts. Nepo baby David Shula, Pat Shermer, who I know through the grapevine. Uh, let's see who else is on here. Mike Nolan, Romeo Cornell, Dennis Allen, 0.347, still coaching the Saints. Got a chance, Dennis. So, yep. RIP Robert Saleh's coaching career. He'll probably be a defensive coordinator. He'd probably go the Steve Spagnuolo route
Hmm.
and go back to being a defensive coordinator and just be awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is entirely possible that, you know, he goes back to being a defense coordinator for a few years, knocks it out of the park, gets another shot, and like actually learns something and goes somewhere where ownership isn't going to say, hey, we need to go get Aaron Rodgers, and like you don't really have a say in what your offensive coaching staff is going to look like because of Aaron Rodgers. Uh, like I think that's an important thing to learn from this is like don't you don't necessarily need to take a job that's going to automatically set you up to fail, which I'm not saying that he hasn't contributed to it himself, but I do think that at this moment in time, coaching for the Jets is being set up for failure.
Yeah. Should the Bengals just fire Lou Anarumo like today and go hire Robert Saleh? Just be like, hey, like we need to turn this thing around because again, another like they gave up 41 points to the Ravens
Yeah.
on Sunday, which is probably the game of the year. And
Hmm.
like, so I thought Thursday night football was going to be the game of the year. That Falcons Bucks game was awesome. That Bengals Ravens game was so it was the Bengals Ravens game was better and somehow also worse. They might need to hire Robert Saleh. The other big news this week, also out of the AFC East, is AFC East centric podcast, even though it might be the worst division in football. New England Patriots, podcast favorite, announced Drake Maye starting at quarterback this Sunday against the Houston Texans at home in New England. I I'm super excited to see Drake Maye start, but I also just like having watched him play a couple snaps already this season. Drake, it's like watching my son do something that's like somewhat dangerous for the first time. Like he's climbing on the jungle gym, and I'm like, I'm excited and I'm like happy for him and I'm glad he's having fun. But at the same time, I'm like, don't fall, don't fall, don't fall. Shit, shit, shit. So like I'm very nervous sitting there watching him. And I'm like, oh God, he's gonna fall. He's gonna fall. Okay. No, he's okay. He's okay. And like every time that Drake Maye gets hit and gets sacked, I tense up and I'm like, oh God, is he okay? Because I'm way more heavily invested in Drake Maye than I ever was in Mac Jones. You know, Mac, I was excited for his rookie year, but I had him fifth in that draft for those 5 quarterbacks that very famously all 5 suck. So you can't really be wrong. However you rank them, you're correct. But I was never like a huge Mac guy. But like with Drake, I mean, you were here during the draft, and my wife was recording me to get my reaction if we didn't draft Drake Maye. I was all in, very excited. I still am very excited for him, but I'm very nervous for Sunday. I'm very, very nervous. I just want it to go well.
Yeah, welcome to the NFL because Will Anderson is also going to be very excited to meet you.
Yeah.
So the offensive line is not good. It just isn't. Uh, Not saying that Jacoby hasn't played his part, but there's no defense for the offensive line. There just isn't. Like, yeah, sure, we can say, well, if he can get the ball out quickly, he might be okay. That's asking a lot of a rookie quarterback that hasn't really had the reps to get up to speed. So, um, maybe, right? Like we can hope, but
It
I think tempering expectations is wise.
I've I've already placed a parlay Drake Maye over 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. What are you saying to me? Should I cash that out? Got Maddox's college fund wrapped up in it.
I don't think that they're gonna let you cash that one out because it's already lost.
Yeah. Part of me is like, okay, so like they were Panthers fans were saying this about Bryce Young, where they're like, Bryce Young has been so bad that we can't properly evaluate the rest of the offense.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about Jacoby Brissett this
Yep.
season. And not the offensive line. We know the offensive line is not good. Although, if you look at like time to throw statistics, they're pretty much league average in giving their quarterback time to throw before he gets hit or before the pocket breaks down.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really not as bad as people think it is. It's not good.
Yeah,
I mean,
but the pass rush win rates are not great.
yeah,
So
it's not. It's like that episode of American Dad where Francine walks in and she's like, I mean, it's not good, but it's not ruined, right? Like it's not horrible. So they're not good, but
yeah.
also when you have a quarterback who's an immobile statue who can't throw the ball more than 5 yards downfield,
Yep.
like Jalen Polk was standing in the middle of the end zone wide open last week
Yeah.
against the Dolphins, and Jacoby had time to throw, no problem, and just completely sailed it and missed him. Like he's been the worst quarterback in the league this season with a bullet. He's been horrible.
Deshaun Watson would like to argue with you.
Man, yeah, that's fair. Like I know I sent you that EPA stat that shows that like the EPA per dropback for Deshaun Watson is like one of the bottom 10 worst of all time through 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Only beat by Will Levis also this season, which
Who
is
only
hilarious.
played not even 2 full games.
But if you look at like on target percentage, Deshaun Watson has been better than Jacoby Brissett for on target
Yeah.
throws this season because Jacoby Brissett is dead last in on target throws this season. So it's not good.
Yeah.
The whole thing they sold us on with Jacoby is they're like, he's mobile, he can extend plays, he can't do any of that. He can do nothing. He can't use his legs, he can't throw. Like, he doesn't do anything except for start every week and lose the locker room. Like there was a story last week about there was about to be a locker room mutiny in New England because they were continuing to start Jacoby Brissett over Drake Maye. And apparently Drake's been way better in practice. And they're like, okay, it's time. And so I'm not going to get into the whole fact that Robert Kraft went and told that podcast that if they don't take down that story, that he's going to restrict their access to the New England Patriots. And what a bitch loser move that is by Robert Kraft.
Yep.
But
sounds like something Woody Johnson would do.
It does. But they did make the change. So they're like, the Patriots are like, that's blatantly false. That's not true at all. I didn't get that coach fired. But Drake Maye is starting on Sunday against the Houston Texans, right? Oh, okay, guys. No, that was the whole thing is Kraft didn't want a bad story about Gerard Mayo out there because, again, shitty coaching hire. I've been over this. But anyway, Drake is starting. I'm excited, but extremely nervous as well. I don't expect him to like light it up and be amazing. I just don't want it's
Yeah.
like so like part of me is like, okay, he can actually extend plays. He has a rocket launcher for an arm. Like
Hmm.
there are things he's going to be able to do way better than Jacoby that'll
Yeah.
make the offense at least more exciting. The other part of me is like, those video games where your character like walks into a room and the mission pops up and it's like survive. And you're like, oh shit. That's how I feel that I'm gonna feel when Drake Maye goes out onto the field for the first snap. He's gonna like walk out and like start looking around the defense and the little red letters are gonna pop up at the top of the screen and it's like survive. Like, oh God. Don't let me don't ruin my dream before it even starts, guys. But I mean, also it's the Patriots are 7-point underdogs,
Hmm.
and we've seen how often massive underdogs are winning this season. Like the Cardinals just did it to the 49ers, the Giants just did
Yep.
it to the Seahawks. If the Giants and Cardinals can beat the 49ers and Seahawks, we can beat the Texans, right? Without Nico Collins, we come on. I'm back in. I'm back in. I told my dad, I was like, I'm not talking about anything Patriots related. I'm not watching anything Patriots related until Drake Maye starts. And now
I mean,
here we are.
Nico Collins not playing is actually a massive deal. It really is. Like the Texans have not been lighting it up offensively, and Nico Collins has been pretty much the exclusive reason why they're scoring points.
Yeah. Yeah, he's been good. So we'll see. The win or loss doesn't really matter to me this weekend. Like, would I like to see Drake May be awesome and win his first start? Of course. Like, that'd be awesome. And if it happens, I will be back on this podcast annoying as hell next week. But I want to just get him out there and start seeing development. Like, Caleb Williams, not good the first couple games. Every week
Yeah.
keeps looking better and better,
Yeah.
gives you something to hope for. Right. So that's what I want to see is like, you're obviously going to see all the flaws. He's a project. There's a lot of
Hmm.
stuff that needs to happen, but I also want to see the flashes and I want to see like, I'm more interested in like, not necessarily this game, but like the next game, what improves in the next game and the next game
Yeah.
and the next game. So
You can't see growth if he's never out there to fuck it up in the beginning anyways.
yeah.
So
So, all right. America's favorite segment, Bolds and Scolds from week 5 of the NFL season. I, I think it's your week to go first with your bold.
okay.
You would think we would track
Um,
this at some
you would
point.
think,
There would be some
but
kind of tracking system.
my bold is actually just for the NFC North in general. Um, while I definitely still have some things that make me want to pump the brakes on a couple of teams in the division, uh, every team in the division is over 500, and the lowest point differential in the division is the Packers at plus 20. Like, um, I don't think there's really an argument against the fact that like they are it is the best division in football right now.
The number 1, 2, and 3 teams in takeaways forced so far this season are the Green Bay Packers, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
So, like, literally the 3 best teams in terms of forcing turnover so far this season. And they're not even, none of those teams are even the best team in the division.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think there's an argument. It almost feels like to me you could take any other 4 teams in the NFC and put them in a division and it still would not be as good as the NFC North.
No.
Like if it was like Eagles, Cowboys, 49ers, and Falcons or something, the NFC North is still better than that. I
Yeah.
I sweat out that Packers win over the Rams this past week. I didn't tell you guys the name for last Sunday because we've been saying like, oh, it's like you think you know stuff Sunday. It's you think you like false sense of accomplishment Sunday. The week 5 Sunday for me was sweaty Sunday. I I bet on multiple games that came down to like the very last either minute or like, the opposite team was driving with the chance to win. Like it happened with Minnesota and the Jets. It happened with the Rams and the Packers. And I had one more. I can't. Oh, the Derrick Henry thing that we picked for the bet on the podcast last week, where literally it like goes to overtime and he has to get a 51-yard run in overtime to get over the 84.5 number. Yeah, I was sweating out bets like all day Sunday. I was like, this
God.
Sunday was bad for my heart. But I want to go back to the well this Sunday, and the Bears are 2.5 point favorites over the Jags in London. And I'm like, okay, if Bears Jags was in Chicago, would I feel comfortable doing that? I don't know, because I still feel like those are two of the weirdest teams. But I can't bet on the London game again, right, Matt? I can't like I don't need to have heart problems before noon again. So my bold for week 5 is Falcons quarterback Kirk Thuggins.
Kirk
Kirko
Cousins.
Kirko Chainz, he is back. I thought Thursday night, like I said, when I watched that Thursday night football game, I was like, damn, this might be the game of the year so far. But it was instantly beat 3 days later by Bengals Ravens.
Yeah.
But Kirk Cousins, 42 of 58, 509 yards, 4 touchdowns. Like he was, I think we forget sometimes because like, I do have Kirk in that range of quarterbacks that's like the what I call the replaceable all-stars, where it's like I feel like, you know, if Kirk was the Dallas Cowboys quarterback, you'd basically just get the same results that you get out of Dak Prescott. There's like 4 or 5 guys where I'm like, yeah, it's like that 10 to they're all in that 10 to 17 range of quarterbacks, and they're all just kind of like the same. But I've always said that Kirk Cousins is at the top of that group because when he gets on a heater,
Mm-hmm.
oh, like
It doesn't matter what you do as a defense at that point.
oh,
Like he's going to shred you. That's the difference between him and Dak. Is that Dak doesn't have that. But
yeah,
when Kirk hits it, you fucked up by letting him get there.
I would argue that there are people probably ahead of Kirk Cousins on the list. Like, does Justin Herbert have that? Show me the game where Justin Herbert did what Kirk Cousins just did on
Yeah.
Thursday night. Show me that. So I think like
In fairness, Kirk Cousins has had far more weapons than Herbert has ever been able to dream about. So
I know I get it, but like still, he's like a 65-year-old quarterback coming off of an Achilles tear. He's like, hey, Tampa, watch this. So he just, I mean, just everything about him was awesome on Thursday. The throws were money. He's like whipping it into like double coverages and like awesome.
yeah.
He was incredible. And then after the game, they're playing that swag surf song, and Kirk just like such a dad move. I could see like me doing this to my kids' friends where he runs up to the stands and he's like doing the little like dance, but he looks like super dorky doing it. But he just threw for 500 yards, which is an Atlanta Falcons record. So the whole crowd's like, fuck yeah, Kirk. Like, let's do it. It was, it was an incredible moment. And I'm just like, yeah, if you're the Falcons, you're sitting there on Friday morning and you're like, this is what we paid for.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we paid for when we got Kirk. And I think people forget that last season before he tore his Achilles, he was on like a 7-week long heater, basically.
Yeah.
He was like the number 1 fantasy quarterback before he tore his Achilles. So
yeah.
He's fully capable of this and fully capable of doing it for an extended period of time. And I was happy to see it.
Yeah.
I like
I mean,
Kirk. I like Kirk.
like I think that like we've seen more of that, like I'm dominant and I'm gonna take over the game from Kirk more over the last 3 years than we have seen it from Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Maybe not 3 because that might run into like the MVP year for Rodgers, but like that last MVP year was basically like the end of when we saw that from Rodgers.
Yeah. There, I don't know. I just think there are people. I think Kirk Cousins is like maybe a top 8 quarterback right now, at least top 10. And I think that there are people like Justin Herbert's the one that comes to mind instantly, but there are people ahead of him in the top 10 that don't have that quality, that like microwave
Yep.
quality. They're just more consistent, which I understand why you would have someone like Justin Herbert higher than Kirk Cousins. But like I'm just saying, like Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, show me the
I
games where
I
you
mean,
did this.
yeah, right. Like right now, especially with what I've seen from Jalen Hurts over the last like what 10 games he's played, like would I put him in my top 10?
It it gets thin
Yeah.
quickly. Like,
Like
I mean, so for sure, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Justin,
he
no,
he was already
Justin.
in the bottom five,
Yeah.
right? And so now it's like Stafford has very much reasserted himself, I think. Certainly like he hasn't necessarily had the stats uh since week one to really support it, but I think anyone who's watched the games is like, this guy is doing everything a human could possibly do under the conditions that he's playing in.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there are four like unassailable quarterbacks that you're like, these are the top four quarterbacks in the
Yep.
league. And it's Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, and Lamar.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's kind of open,
Hmm.
honestly. And I'm not saying like Kirk Cousins is 5. I'm just saying like that's when you start getting into the debates. And you can rank those top four guys in whatever order. And as long as Mahomes is number 1, I probably won't begrudge you if you're like Lamar Jackson's 2 and
Yeah.
Allen and whatever order you put those 3 guys in, I'm fine. But like for 5 through 10, it's like, okay, there's Kirk and Stroud and Stafford and Goff and like
Yeah.
there's a bunch of guys you could name. I'm sure people would throw Dak and Purdy. Uh, I'm looking through the quarterbacks right now. Jordan Love, Jalen
Yes.
Hurts, Jaden Daniels, maybe with how he's played so far this season. So
Yeah.
yeah, but anyway, great game by Kirk. I think it's a good reminder that like there is a reason that the Falcons paid him, and that was it. If you watched it, so um, who is your scold for Week 5?
The sea chickens just in general. Um, you can't, absolutely cannot lose that game to the Giants after the loss to the Lions. Like that was your chance to get back on the horse and, you know, continue to take control of your division. And I mean, like the 49ers, served you up a gift there, but you didn't take advantage of it. Um, so, now you're kind of you gave up a lot of that advantage that you have. Can't can't just completely abandon the run the way they did. Kenneth Walker only ran the ball 5 times, and he was there. I think he ran the ball for them more than anyone else in that game. Yeah.
Yeah, he ran
Uh,
it 5 times for 19 yards.
yeah. And like that just can't happen. They ran the ball a combined 11 times.
I'm gonna give out another bold for that game to you and me because Matt and I manage a dynasty fantasy team together, and we prioritize getting Giants running back Tyrone Tracy. I think like in the second or third round of our rookie draft. And from what I read, it was like an overdraft. But in his first NFL start, he has 18 carries for 129 yards and a catch.
Yeah.
Like looked awesome, shredding the Seahawks defense in that one. So bold for us to get him and bold for him. Great start. So But yeah, now they're kind of in like a do or die game against the 49ers on Thursday Night Football.
Yeah.
Like,
Which
really,
in fairness, it's do or die for both of them.
yeah. Either they're tied 3-3 at the top of their division after this week,
Hmm.
or the Seahawks have a 2-game lead after
Yeah.
6 weeks of football. So, yeah, it's pretty like suddenly crazy important Thursday Night Football games. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
Bucks Falcons was like a heater and like important. And now this game is like suddenly really important. I'm like, okay, like maybe the Thursday Night Football guys did a good job this year.
Accidentally.
We'll see. They didn't mean to, that's for sure. My scold is the Buffalo Bills. Not for the normal reasons I would scold the Buffalo Bills, but during their game against the Houston Texans on Sunday, it was very clear that Josh Allen suffered a major concussion and was
Hmm.
completely knocked out on the ground. Like he was lights out, asleep on the ground after suffering a really bad concussion. They woke him up with smelling salts. They cracked the smelling salts under his nose to wake him up from his horrible concussion that knocked him out. Took him into a blue tent to evaluate his concussion, where apparently they told him, "You're good to go." And he obviously didn't want to come out of the game. So he was like, okay, if you guys say so. Went back into the game and was horrifically bad. Like the worst, maybe the worst Josh Allen game we've ever seen,
Yeah.
completing 9 out of 30 passes, which, you know what should be a sure sign that he had a horrible concussion is the fact that he completed less than 30% of his fucking passes.
Yeah.
Like, this is unacceptable on every single level that he was allowed to play. I don't understand why you have any of the rules, the spotters, the training staff, the blue tent. Like everything was very clearly and blatantly ignored. And this guy stayed in the game. And they're lucky that they just lost the game. Like it could have been way worse if he got another concussion, he got hit again, especially the way that Josh Allen plays. Like I don't know. I don't know why we pretend that we care about any of this shit if the only guys who have to come out of games for concussions are the non-superstars, and the superstars, like this happened with Tom Brady, it happened with Patrick Mahomes in an AFC championship, it's happened with Josh Allen this weekend. It's an important game, you're the best player, you're not coming out. The one thing
Yeah.
I would say about Tom Brady is he still beat the Falcons in the Super Bowl. Goat. Goat. I don't want to hear it. Goat. So yeah, unacceptable. But last segment before we sign off is the gambling picks for week 6, starting with the Thursday night football game, which is 49ers at the Seahawks. 49ers favored by 3.5. I I hate this game, Matt. I hate it. I almost text you. I was looking at all the bets while I was at lunch today, and I was like, oh, God, you know, I've been banking on the kickers going over 1.5 field goals. You know, the last couple of weeks we won with Brandon Aubrey 2 weeks ago. Last week I bet on Young Hoku, the kicker for the
Hmm.
Falcons, who went 3 of 5. Which, like, I can't stop jinxing these guys because Brandon Aubrey hadn't missed all season. He went 2 of 3. Young Hoku hadn't missed all season. He goes 3 of 5. So, my B. But won the bet. Jake Moody would have been my pick, the 49ers kicker, but he's hurt. And they had to like sign a dude off waivers to come kick for them.
Yeah.
And I'm unsure about how that's going to go. And then looking at like Jacob Myers or Jake Myers, whatever the Seattle kicker's name is, he's been pretty inconsistent this season, like bad. And I could see him pulling like a 1 for 3. And I'm sitting here being like, God damn it, the kickers finally screwed me. So my original proposal was going to be that I take one kicker to go over 1.5 field goals and you take the other, because that would have hit each of the last 2 weeks. But maybe next week I'm skipping the kickers and I am going with 49ers running back Jordan Mason over 82.5 rushing yards.
Okay.
Tyrone Tracy just toe up from the flow up against Seattle this weekend in his first NFL start. Jordan Mason, number 2 in the NFL in total rushing, only behind Derrick Henry. Number 1 in rushes over 10 yards. Number 2 in rushes under 20 yards. Number 2 in rushes after contact. He basically is like number 1 or number 2 in every rushing stat. And the only ones he's number 2 on are the ones where he's behind Derrick Henry. And Seattle's missing guys. They have not been good in run defense. So over 82.5 for Jordan Mason. What do you got?
Yeah, I looked at that one too. I'm gonna take JSN for over 4.5 receptions. The 49ers have necessarily the horses in their secondary to really clamp down on these receivers. And JSN is also particularly good at finding those soft spots in the zone. So I don't think it's going to be particularly difficult for him to get to 5.
Okay, I like that one. I was looking at this and I was like, oh man, Matt's gonna pick the Seahawks money line. And I'm just 100% not confident one way or the
Yeah.
other and how this game's gonna go. I have no idea. So that's why I went to props.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, I wanted to, but I also was like, those haven't really been working out for me lately. So
It's been, I was gonna say, if you pick a Thursday night underdog one more time on this podcast. All right, the weekend games. And I think we're gonna do a podcast first here. I believe we're gonna pick the same thing. And so what we'll do, if you want to do that, we'll just double down on it and say we're either going 2-0 or we're going 0-2 here because this is our pick. But I have no idea what's going to happen on Thursday night. I do have an idea of what's going to happen at 4:25 p.m. Eastern time in Dallas, Texas, where the Lions of Detroit, favored by 3 points, are going in for a revenge game against the Dallas Cowboys after what happened down there last year. Lions by 3.5. I'm not going to think about it. I'm just going to place my largest bet of the season. My personal bet. Seriously, this is like, if you bet 1 unit per game, this is like a 5 unit. This is like to me, this is like a max play.
yeah. I'm gonna push it even further. The alternate line of -6.5 is +158. I will smash that. I really don't see a world where they don't win by at least a touchdown in this game. Especially if Parsons is still out. Like that's the one guy that could like really, really muck this game up for the Lions. But other than that, it's like, yeah, the safety play has been good enough this year that CeeDee Lamb isn't going to be able to single-handedly destroy them.
I really like that game. I'm going with the -3 just to be safe because we were 2-2 last week on the picks thanks to Derrick Henry's last minute heroics, and then the long shot last week missed. So, we needed like a 4-0 week.
We really do.
We really would be nice to get a 5-0 week if we could hit the long shot too, but like I'll take 4-0. So I went a little bit safer, but I'll put that down too. So we have Jordan Mason over 82.5 rushing yards on Thursday Night Football. Jackson Smith and Jigba over 4.5 receptions. Lions -3 versus Dallas. Lions -6.5 versus Dallas. And then the long shot bet of the week, bets +300 or more. I am taking Patriots wide receiver Jalen Polk to score a touchdown in Drake Maye's debut. I kind of alluded to it earlier, but like if you look at the advanced stats on Polk and the separation that he's getting in routes,
Hmm.
he's been really fucking good this season.
Yeah.
They just can't get him the ball. And I fully expect Drake to fix that this weekend. I'm not saying it's going to be like an amazing game, but an anytime touchdown for Jalen Polk is plus 390 on DraftKings. Like
Yeah.
pretty big odds. And I think if they're going to score a passing touchdown this weekend, that's going to be the guy to catch it. So, but that is it for us. As always, Fouled Out can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Pocket Cast, Overcast, anywhere you get your podcast. You can hit us up at Gmail, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. You can find our videos on TikTok at Fouled Out Sports Podcast. It's a long name, but you can't miss it. Matt, good podcast considering there was no preparation or notes. That's okay. Big weekend this weekend for multiple reasons. My little sister is getting married this weekend, so we will all be celebrating and enjoying her wedding. So congratulations to Aaron and Ray.
Woo!
But from the sports side this weekend, Texas versus Oklahoma on Saturday as an SEC game. It ain't right. Ole Miss versus LSU is 9 versus 13. And then 7:30 Saturday night, Ohio State at Oregon, number 2 versus number 3. Absolute banger. Hockey has started. You watched the first couple games of the hockey season. 49ers Seahawks on Thursday night. Got a London game again. Jags and Bears. Fighting Georgia's play Ravens this weekend. That was one bet I looked at is the over under on that is 51.5. And I feel like that's an over smash spot. So that game's on at 1 on Sunday. Lions Cowboys 425. Oh man, Monday Night Football is Buffalo and the Jets. Ooh. First game of the new coach's era. Let's see it. But everybody enjoy the sports this weekend, and we will be back next week to break down week 6. We're going to be a third of the way through the regular season next week. Where does the time go? But all right, my friend, I will see you soon.
Yep. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Bye, Mom.
Bye, Robin.